So what I wanted to do is to go ahead and go over chapter 8 because I had a situation which I had to handle, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was familiar with chapter 8. So I decided to put something together real quick and to go over chapter 8. But also, please know that you are also responsible for going over chapter 8 yourself. We were supposed to cover chapters 1 through 8 for the first midterm, before the midterm. So it is well known that you were supposed to get chapter 8 completed. So we don't have any assignment for chapter 8. However, I just wanted to go over the critical points because there will be some questions on chapter 8, emotional behavior disorders. So, what are emotional behavior disorders? I'm sure that this is probably one of the most common factors that we experience inside of special education, the EBD component, because a lot of the EBD components can be stemmed from social emotional issues that comes from the family or the social environment, or what I like to call the lottery of birth. We don't get to choose who we are born to. So a lot of times we can be born to some pretty stressful situations, and this then goes into students who are characterized with EBD. It's basically how chronic behavior issues can impact and affect students' learning, and that's essentially what special education is. How does a particular event, whether it's neurological, psychological, or experience through the environment, impact the learning ability of the student? And the characteristics, of course, are, as you can see, the aggression, defiance, and acting out, withdrawal, anxiety, depression. And, of course, why does it matter? Because it impacts the social interaction of the students as well as their academics. And, for teachers to understand what EBD, emotional behavior disorders are, is a serious issue, because a lot of times, we want to just essentially label, instead of labeling the kid EBD, we want to label the kid BAD, bad. And, sometimes folks got a little BAD on them, but, we have to ask ourselves, what does that stem from and how does that impact the students? So causes and risk factors for EBD, biological, could be brain functioning, genetics, and parent substance abuses. There's this lady by the name of Kimberly Crenshaw, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. She came up with the idea of intersectionality. And this simply means that there are factors that may be EBD and also other learning disabilities or disabilities that go along with the EBD. The parental substance abuse in my current school is real bad. In Moody, at Moody Elementary, there's a lot of substance abuse that goes along with that. There's a lot of meth addicts and other things that I'm seeing with some of the students, and how that impacts them. So you can have a neurological impact or genetic impact based off of substance abuse, but it also can strictly be environmental. The genetic or the brain functional impact, we learned about ADHD, and that can be an issue with that. Environmental factors, from trauma to neglect, family instability. Also, I remember working at a school in Birmingham, and they had a significant environmental issue going on, in which about 10 years ago, it was a big study finding out that, that there was some toxic soil, and the air quality was really bad due to the industrial plants that were around. So that was that's another issue. Of course, peer rejection, the social interaction, and we also can add to that the social media component of the bullying. Social emotional impact. Students with EBD often struggle with self regulation and peer relationships. The self regulation. We also talked about autism. The self regulation component with the EBD can once again go into intersect in multiple disabilities. So, you know, but that is, the impulse control. I work with plenty of students who have low impulse control. They don't have the ability to regulate or to understand that they don't have to act on every impulse. So the key factor for the chapter, of course, this is going to be on the midterm, so we need to make sure that we review this. Will be recognizing risk factors that helps early identification and intervention. And classroom supports and intervention. The big one is the PBIS, the Positive Behavioral Intervention Supports. That is a big initiative. The question is will these initiatives still be around if the current administration, the Department of, what is it, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOG, if that's getting ready to dismantle the Department of Education, will these federal government supported initiatives be around? That's a really good question, because if the Department of Education is dismantled, then the responsibility for education, especially with students with disabilities, will have to go to the states. And you ask yourself if state funding, especially for schools, is associated with housing taxes, and if you got a school system around, or a school that is around a whole bunch of abandoned houses, who then pays for the taxes, and then how do you support some of these factors? And of course, I always think about African American students and students who have been minoritized, because they come up in systems that many of them didn't have the ability to try to prevent. African American people being enslaved, and then having to go into redlining, which is groups the housing basically says that black people can't live in certain areas, so they essentially created black ghettos, and then the black ghettos were devalued. And if you're in a situation that happened to you, how does the state then supplement the need for some of these different kinds of initiatives? So of course, you could just either pause and you could check out some of these things. Of course, you have the functional behavioral assessment, the FBA. That is one of the things that the schools use a lot for students who have experiencing the impact of EBD. And that is essentially what goes, every student or every person within that supports the child has to have a copy of the functional behavioral assessment plan, or the IBD, the BID, the behavior intervention plan. And that is like a plan for students to allow them to manage their EBD, and teachers to manage their EBD. Like, say if a kid is kind of cutting up, and that they have special education services and their diagnosis is EBD, and in the plan it might say that they are able to take a break, use a break card, take a walk for 5 minutes and then return to class, deep breathing mechanisms, that support the emotional learning component, so that they can develop these kinds of coping skills. So the takeaway here is to understand how schools must provide a balanced academic for students with emotional support, and supporting students beyond the classroom. And this is something that when we talked about, I believe it was in chapter 2, family. How does students, how are students impacted by family initiatives, or family that students with special education services, special education needs, what does that look like, and how do they receive support outside of the classroom and beyond? So focus on deployment of social skills when students with EBD, and also jail systems are filled with students with EBD. As a matter of fact, it is well known that many of the people who are in jail are students who have once had special education services or been labeled EBD or oppositional defiant disorder. We talked about that in the last class that we had on Tuesday. But just to keep on going, as the assessment, this is will be covered on the midterm, so you can just pause and look through these things. If I didn't cover anything, you are more than